This is a video review for the Flame Toys Furai model kit Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. I got this as a gift from my wife for Valentine's Day. Thank you, wife. No real names. Our names are classified just like old Snake Eyes here. This is my first action figure review with many more to come, and it's my passion in life: action figures, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Wars, and everything in between. But I wanted to start off with a character that I love and have loved for 40 years. So Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is a perfect character for that. I do enjoy putting together model kits. I haven't done one in about 20 years. The last time I did a model kit would have been a Bandai Gundam Wing model kit, which was for a Gundam Wing, and it was a special story. So they have a Heavy Arms custom Gundam Wing model kit, and I put that kit together. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't too tough to do. Most of the pieces stayed together, and we had fun doing that. So when I had the chance to do another model kit for Snake Eyes, which I just found sort of by accident, I didn't want to pass up the chance. So I do have some observations on putting this model kit together. Some things I liked, some things I didn't, and some, I guess, what I would call tips for if you want to purchase this kit and build it yourself. It's an articulated kit. We were almost kind of getting an action figure out of it, but what I would say is it's not an action figure. It doesn't necessarily hold up to the rigors of an action figure. It's kind of a pose it and forget it situation. I do have him in a kind of dynamic pose, and I could get him into other poses, but I would pretty much leave it. There were some issues with some of the pieces that I just couldn't get to stay on. And some other reviewers, if you read those or watch those reviews, you will find that they had similar issues. So basically, here's what I got for you. Now this Snake Eyes is basically it's sort of a takeoff on the 1985 edition Snake Eyes version 2, as those of us in the G.I. Joe community would instantly recognize. But it's not quite Snake Eyes version 2. It's obviously the head is the Snake Eyes version 2 head, and then you have the bandolier with the 3 grenades, which is pretty iconic to that version. He does have a holster belt, and of course an Uzi. And this set does come with other firearms. It comes with a rocket launcher and some sort of high-tech submachine gun that I didn't bother to assemble because Snake Eyes comes with an Uzi. In my life, in my world, he has an Uzi, and if he doesn't have one, then I get him one, right? So he also comes with 2 swords, 2 pistols, so he can be pistols akimbo, he can be swords akimbo. The swords both attached to this backpack, and there's the knife, which I will get into, falling off just from the slightest turn. So you can put 2 swords on here, and they would go back to back. The swords themselves don't actually go into the sheaths. They're handles that you put in there. They're just the handle. So if you want to display them with one sword in his hand and one one in the sheath, you would take the handle and stick it in there and everything like that. The reason why I don't have two swords in the sheaths is because, or two swords in a sheath, two sheaths in a sword, is really because, honestly, it makes the bandolier bunch up against his neck, so it's like his grenades are choking him, and it doesn't look very good. So I couldn't do that. The knife, which I just mentioned, falls off at the slightest provocation. In the leg positioning. The knife, which falls off at the slightest provocation, as I mentioned, is meant to attach to the belt, which is another difference between the actual 1985 Snake Eyes and this version, because that one had a knife on his leg. But it doesn't really stay on well. If you move it, it's probably gonna fall off. And then the place where it goes on the belt, it doesn't even really stay well enough that you can you can't really crazy glue it in or anything. It'll still come off. So there's that. He's meant to have pouches on each of his wrist gauntlets, but I didn't like the pouches on there. There's versions of Snake Eyes where, I don't know, he almost seems like kind of like a bondage type of dude, and I don't know, all those pouches just kind of look excessive to me, so I went with a minimum of pouches. I did attach a pouch here, a pouch there, and a pouch on his other arm. So the 1985 version, once again, did have pouches on his arm. Didn't have one on his leg, but since the knife won't actually go into his leg, I can't attach that there either. So there's that. This figure has a lot of articulation, 18 points of articulation that I was able to count. The head, the neck, they are both on separate ball joints. So there's a ball joint at the bottom of the neck, a ball joint at the top of the neck. The chest and abdomen, both shoulders with butterfly joints. The elbow joints are double elbows. The wrists, his thighs, and the knees are on a double joint as well. And then the ankles have articulation as well. Articulation and poseability aren't exactly the same thing, so I've sort of covered them separately. Now, problems I had with the kit. The endoskeleton arms, when you build this figure, you're kind of putting it together, a skeleton, and then building snake eyes around the skeleton. The endoskeleton arms were very difficult to assemble. It was easily the hardest part to get them to assemble and stay together. It took me over an hour just for the arms. I ended up having a mismatched arm joint, which was my fault, but it was due to the difficulty. The exoskeleton rather, forearms were also extremely difficult to get to stay on, and they won't stay on. So if you bend his arm, the exoskeletal arms will separate. It's just going to happen. So I ended up gluing them down, and what I used for that was Scotch super glue. This is a super bonding agent, bonds very quickly. Once you glue it, it's never coming apart. It doesn't impact the posability or the articulation, other than for one slight thing, which I will mention. He has elbow kind of pads that go there, and I had to glue those down too because they would fall off extremely easily. They would just fall off. So I glued them. The utility belt doesn't stay hooked on there are two posts on his waist, so I glued those down too. And the ball joints for his wrists were so small. I don't have large hands. Here's my hands. I don't have really large hands. I have kind of like small, dainty hands, I guess, so in a way. But my hands were too big, so I had to have my wife assemble the ball joint. So once again, thank you, wife. If you can get the knife in the hole there, which I did have it in and it fell out when I turned them around, it severely limits the mobility of the left leg. So honestly, I don't know. I like the knife, but I just can't get it to stay in. Now, in regards to posability, the box has several poses on it that you can get the figure in more or less if everything goes well, if it's assembled 100% like they want it to be assembled. Some of the other videos I saw, they got him into some pretty cool poses. Initially, I had him on one knee, but again, the knife kept falling off and I just got frustrated with it and decided to stand him up. Accessories, I would have to say this kit has excellent accessories. 2 swords, 2 sheaves, 2 handles for the swords to go into the sheaves, an Uzi, 2 pistols, and a submachine gun, a rocket launcher, and something like 8 sets of hands, like 4 different types of hands: fists with holes, fists with no holes, gun hands. You can actually, if you didn't have a gun in his hand, you could actually make it look like a point. So like he's pointing his finger, which if you've ever seen the 1985 file card, he is pointing his finger directly at you, breaking the fourth wall, so to speak, on his file card. And you can absolutely do that sort of pose with this figure. In fact, when I had him on one knee, that's what he was doing. The aesthetic, well, once again, aesthetically, I mean, it's Snake Eyes, right? You don't really have to paint the kit. It's not necessary, but you can. If I was going to paint anything on this figure, I probably would paint the belt buckle or something like that silver, and maybe a couple highlights here or there silver, just to break up the black plastic. But aesthetically, I mean, it's Snake Eyes. There's no denying who it is. It looks great. In terms of compatibility, I'm going to bring up compatibility. Compatibility is an issue with this figure, and the reason why I say that is because this kit is marketed as a 1/12 scale action figure, but Snake Eyes only stands about 5.5 inches if he's standing fully erect and not in some kind of naturalistic action pose. To compare that to a normal G.I. Joe classified figure, he is, he's not a 1/12 scale figure. I don't know how they figure that, but that's what the kit's marketed as. The pistols look well and they look well enough in his hand, but they're also seem to work okay with actual 1/12 scale figures, if you can believe that. But yeah, from a compatibility standpoint, it's not good. So in summary, way I got it figured, Flame Toys Furai Snake Eyes model kit is an easy assembled model kit, but it's kind of frustrating on its way to completion. limited posability despite superior articulation, feels like it can't really get out of its own way. After giving a few ornery parts, after gluing some of the parts, basically, they're kind of ornery. I feel the experience does get better, but it's going to do most of its work getting the occasional reposition and dusting on a shelf or desk. If you put it on a desk, you probably ought to get a stand. He does stand well. It's not like he's going to fall over, but you know, if you bang on the table or something, he will fall. Of course, he doesn't want to fall right now, but he will. He can. It has happened. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on this figure, the way I got it figured. Hope to see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.